Tonight we're here to talk about the Newburyport path to net zero by 2050. So, these slides here. So topics tonight are, we're talking about energy, how it impacts Newburyport, and our topics include greenhouse gas emissions, electric supply aggregation, city ordinances, and this concept of getting to net zero emissions by 2050. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts actually announced this on Earth Day this year, that we're getting to net zero. So what does that mean? Molly and Mike are going to tell us all about that, but it actually equates to 85% of the emissions from 1990. So it'll all be interesting. So Molly Edinburgh, she is the sustainability manager for the city of Newburyport, and sorry, I'm looking at my notes. Molly has been serving as a sustainability manager for 14 years. She oversees both recycling and energy. For recycling, she's responsible for managing solid waste, composting, and recycling citywide. And for energy, she oversees energy supply and procurement, the city's green communities designation, and citywide energy efficiency programs. So Molly is also a member of the Newburyport Energy Advisory Committee and the Resiliency Committee. If you're not familiar with these committees, Molly and Mike are going to talk about them tonight, and if you go out to cityofnewburyport.com, you can learn about the committees, what they're about, who the members are, what they do, and how you can participate. Before joining the city of Newburyport, Molly was the general manager of Citizens Energy, a Boston-based company that offers assistance programs worldwide, funded by its varied subsidiary commercial enterprises in energy, healthcare, and international development. Michael Strauss, he is the chair of the Newburyport Energy Advisory Committee, serving for over 10 years. Mike has helped Newburyport become a green community. In his professional life, Mike is a consultant, researching various aspects of materials and materials processing, mostly in the renewable energy field, including biomass to ethanol, water desalination, and lithium recovery from salt water. Mike has degrees in mathematics, physics, and a PhD in materials science and engineering, all from MIT. Okay, we just wanted to promote our next event, so we're taking a break over summer, but in September, on September 28th, same time, 7 p.m., we will be hosting a film. We're showing a film over at the Firehouse, and admission is free for up to 110 attendees. Tickets will be available through the Firehouse website, and it's not live yet. If you're on the Storm Surge mailing list, we will send a mailer out to announce that. If you're not on the Storm Surge mailing list and you're interested, drop us a mail at stormsurge9@gmail.com. We thought we'd play you the trailer for the movie because we're sort of excited about this.
My name is Damon, and this is my daughter Velvet. Her major concern right now is the elusive art of sleep direction. But soon, she'll have to face a rapidly deteriorating environment.
The ice sheet is now melting faster than the scientists predicted.
I think there's room for a different story, a story that focuses on the solutions to some of these problems. So in 2040, what will the world look like for our daughter if we just embrace the best that already exists?
Instead of having governments that are reacting to disaster, we need governments and businesses that actually take us off in a different direction.
Maybe it's farming, or it can be energy, it can be housing, or empowering girls.
I'd like to see deforestation being stopped.
Oh, that would be so cool. That'd be awesome.
Just be respectful to Earth.
Imagine Velvet, we adopted regenerative practices like phrases, pulling the carbon into the soil and making it healthier.
That's right, yeah.
And we embrace efficient local energy.
Bangladesh has 5 million solar home systems. They have that power in their own hands. This is bringing people together.
But here I am sitting on an aeroplane that is spewing out carbon. You can't help but be a hypocrite because our entire system is built on fossil fuels.
What were you guys thinking?
Well, sometimes we weren't.
The power of innovation, imagination, creativity is within all people.
People want to be working on something that they can see is actually helping to regenerate the world.
Everywhere you look, you will see incredible reasons for hope.
You could feed 10 billion people with the protein from marine permaculture alone.
Wow. Not only are there so many people who want to take part in telling a new story, we have everything we need right now to make it happen. What's your 2040?
I just want the future to be good.
We're sort of excited about that.
Looks good.
Yeah. All right.
Is that going to be released in theaters or what?
So actually, the film was released a couple years ago, then what hit? COVID, right? And so it's a film that I think was produced in the UK and has been distributed globally, but not really getting a whole lot of volume, and play. So Storm Surge has purchased rights to show the film, and we're going to show it on September 28th. Actually, let me get back into mode here. So we'll show it at the Firehouse on Wednesday, September 28th, and free admission for up to 110 attendees. So the Firehouse will have the registration for your tickets on its website, and we'll send a reminder or a notice out to all the Storm Surge members mailing list when that's available. So if you're not on our mailing list and you're interested in the film, drop us a mail so we know to include you on that. Okay. All right, so just a few thanks before we get started on our topics tonight. So the Institution for Savings has given Storm Surge a grant to fund our 2022 speaker series, so we're very thankful to the bank. Also, NCM Hub and Sarah Blackstone in the back there filming us and capturing our recordings and then playing them out, posting them to Port Media so that they can be replayed. She's awesome to work with. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks, NCM Hub. Also, the city of Newburyport, okay, so they give us use of this room here. Oftentimes we're usually downstairs, but they had another meeting down there, so we're up here, a little cozier, but still we appreciate the availability of the space. Thanks to Molly and Mike for being here and sharing your thoughts on the energy topic. And special thanks to our Storm Surge volunteers for getting this event together. If anybody is interested in working with us, we welcome you. Again, our email address is there, and we have cards out on the table with our email address. And thanks to everybody who's out tonight and dialed in. We appreciate your participation and attention. So, time to get going on our show here. So, let me end this one and cue up the next slide.
Good evening, everybody. I'm obviously Molly. Nice to see you all. So this is a big topic. Energy, as you all know, is a complex industry, and we have a lot of work ahead of us to meet our goals for 2050, and we're going to talk about some of those tonight, hopefully most of them. So, let's see. So getting to net zero by 2050. Tonight you're going to hear about net zero, combining energy efficiency and renewable energy generation to meet those goals. So what Net0 is making your home as energy efficient as possible, and that could be through windows, insulation, all those things that you do with Mass Save, getting more efficient systems, heat pumps, air conditioning, all those kinds of things. Putting solar on where you can, geothermal, whatever renewables you can plan for in your home. And then if you can't get all of that covered to make your home net zero energy, you can offset that with renewables. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But getting to net zero is a difficult process, as you will hear, but the city's been sort of working on this for years. The master plan, which was produced in 2017, actually had some help from a clean energy roadmap that we did in 2014. And I see some people here that were very helpful in that process as well, where we declared that we wanted to be net zero. The time frame was, probably 2040 at that point, but with the state's new update, as Maria mentioned, for 2050, we have aligned ourselves with that as well. We just received a grant in December to help us plan for decarbonization, so we're working on that now. So we don't have all the answers for how we're going to decarbonize, but we have a lot of answers, but we still have more work to do, and that plan is going to help us do that. So we're in the midst of that plan right now. But I want to say that important to all the work that we do in the city, as we know, downstairs is a big meeting of the planning board, and volunteers are crucial to how things work in the city. And the Energy Advisory Committee, as well as the Resiliency Committee, Jane is here, as well, our chair of Resiliency, are crucial to making these things happen and getting our city to meet its goals and discuss plans and how we get there. There are some Energy Advisory Committee members, I'm going to talk about that, but we meet the last Thursday of every month. Everybody is welcome. These are the members. I don't think I need to read them all, but Joanne, would you like to stand or raise your hand? Joanne is here.
Hello.
Joanne's here. Mike is here. Is there anyone else? That's it. I think there's a couple people that are downstairs. But anyway, I think everybody here has done something to help the city. But the EAC basically is an advisory committee. It works with the mayor and other city officials. It doesn't pass laws. It doesn't write policy. It can suggest policy, but it works to research and educate people and educate the mayor and the administration on what potential solutions and problems we can solve. So the Energy Advisory Committee is crucial. We would never be where we are today without the EAC. So thank you all very much. I couldn't do my job without them, I can tell you that. Next. So, as we were saying earlier, there's many steps along the way, but in 2008, Governor Deval Patrick first developed the Global Warming Solutions Act, and that was what kicked off the Green Communities program. We wanted to be the first green community, but Cambridge beat us. And then we went to, we thought we were going, in 2009, we thought we would be approved by the City Council, but we were voted down based on the Stretch Energy Code, which was a code that had to be passed by the City Council. And the builders all said, no, you can't do this. People won't be able to afford to live in Newburyport anymore if you do that to homes. And look where we are today. So that was in 2008, but in 2010 or 2010, we were able to pass because the building code aligned with what the international building codes were. So there was not going to be much of a difference, so they did agree to it at that point. But we were a couple years late. But what that means is that program is really just for municipal buildings, and we get grants, and it's all about energy efficiency. We basically touched every building, except for this one because it's fairly new, in some way, with lighting or HVAC system upgrades, insulation. We bought our street lights. That's been a significant savings for the city. We've upgraded those to LED. So we've touched almost every building in the city, but we still have more. We can go much deeper. We can do much deeper retrofits than we have so far, but we are continuing to work on that. But we've gotten about $1.2 million from the state from that program. As I mentioned earlier, in 2014, and these are shots from that, we did a clean energy roadmap series, and we worked with the community, and we talked about what things we needed to do, and we were helped organized by a big consulting firm out of Boston. We were one of the first communities to do that, and we developed our goals at that point. And then when the master plan rewrite came back in I think it started in 2015, we were able to put forward our goals that we had developed in the Clean Energy Roadmap. And we were also able to, we really asked them to have a big focus for the master plan at that point on sustainability, which had never been really talked about before in master planning. So that was a great thing that we were able to do as well. And then, as Maria mentioned, on Earth Day in 2021, the state announced its new roadmap for climate policy, and that is meeting net zero by 2050, and it's 85% reduction from 1990 levels. So that is the goal that we're all trying to achieve in the state of Massachusetts. Doesn't mean that all the other states, but other states have different goals, but most people, and not just in Massachusetts, but around the world, are striving for similar goals. So we're all trying to work together on this. So around energy and emissions, there are three general topic areas, very simple: residential, municipal, and commercial, industrial. And then we have the three generation sources: electricity, building, heat, and transportation. This next slide is very interesting, I think, because we were really surprised to find this out. We are very fortunate to have Deb Shepard from Riverstone Sustainability, a resident of Newburyport, who helped us put together this greenhouse gas inventory. She did this pro bono for us, and it was a lot of work. It took over a year. We had looked at every little bit of carbon that we produce in the city of Newburyport, and this is what we got at the end of the day: how much electricity, heating, and transportation. This is what shocked us, was the transportation number. So you can see that that number is 28%, no, 36%. But if you add the two, electricity and heating, which are buildings, so that's the built environment, you get about 58% of the usage of carbon from those two, but 36 we thought was really high. And we counted, the way we counted this, because we don't really know the mileage, we would love to have the state figure out how we can capture that information when you do your upgrade every year, your inspection sticker. Maybe that's a way we can capture that, but all we could really capture was data from our assessor and our treasurer in who has vehicles in Newburyport, who's registered in Newburyport. But we tried to capture, what buses are doing here, what boaters are doing here. So we tried to capture as much as we can, even the train going through, and then, average numbers for what commuters might be doing. So that was a surprising number. So we think that there's a huge opportunity for the city to tackle transportation and reducing that carbon number. So, big picture items are basically converting to electricity. So we have talked about that a lot at the Energy Advisory Committee. If we can convert everything possible to electricity, then we can be renewable. That's, whether it's geothermal, wind, or solar. That's one way to get there. We are doing a lot of different things to meet that. We have some charging stations. We just met with National Grid this week. We're looking at possibly 2 fast charging stations in Newburyport. We're continuing to work with National Grid on a number of levels. We have a community solutions program that we just signed with them. That's a 3-year program where we're going to be looking at a lot of different things with them. That includes heat pump technology for buildings, trying to get rebates, reductions, more massive audits for folks, for not just residential, but commercial and retail as well. We've been working hard on building ordinances, and Mike's going to get into that with you all. There's a lot of things that can be done with building ordinances, but as you can imagine, it's very difficult to pass. Some of those ordinances, like we saw years ago with the stretch code, it was difficult to pass. We have a couple of ordinances that we did pass this past fall, but I won't steal your thunder, I might go talk about those, to help municipal buildings. But as far as telling everybody what to do with their building, that's a different story. And then we have our decarbonization plan, which I mentioned. That's our grant that we just received from the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission. And we're working with that, and we're looking at vehicles, again, national grid, and all different resources, as well as financial resources, maybe talking to some banks and seeing if we can get some programs for people so that they can do those deep energy retrofits and make complete changes in their homes. And then community choice aggregation, that has some opportunities, and Mike's going to get into that as well. And that's where we start. For Mike.
Thank you, Molly.
I'll be back.
She'll be back.
I'll be back.
So we get to work together, we get to give our talks together.
Yeah.
And she's been really helpful for the Energy Committee and for the city, so we're really lucky to have Molly. Community choice aggregation. This is something that other towns have done. We have started it, we haven't pulled the trigger on it. So what it is it allows cities or towns to group all of their residents and businesses into one buying pool for electricity. And then they go out as a group and they buy electricity. And that gives you more control over price, stability of price, and choice of what sort of energy you have. This all started back in the 1990s when the state deregulated electricity. So now, National Grid, who you get your bill from, they actually only operate the wires. They are responsible for making sure that the wires work and the poles are up. But they buy energy on your behalf, but they don't make it anymore. They sold off all the energy production assets. So the power plants are owned by private companies. They go to the market and they buy it for you. And we as residents and as citizens have the right to buy energy on our own behalf. So all of you probably get mailings and robocalls from energy companies saying, sign up with us, and you'll get a great deal. Some of them are good deals, some of them aren't. The Attorney General did a study, and they found out that Massachusetts residents, on signing up on those deals, were losing several $100 million a year, because they start you with a teaser offer that sounds really good, and then they start ratcheting it up. Community choice aggregation is similar, but different and better. The way it works is as a group you get to go out and buy it, so you have more buying power. What also happens is you have a fixed contract. So it's not a contract that says, well, this is what the rate is, but maybe we'll shift it this and then in a year or two. It's you get a contract that says, for the next 3 years, we will buy energy at this price, and that's what the price is. And so the town can do those sorts of deals. You might say, well, why is this better than what National Grid can do? They're much bigger than a town, and that's true. But they have certain regulatory constraints. They have to go out to the market and buy energy twice a year, once in the fall, once in the spring. That's why your energy bill changes. In the winter, it's usually higher. They go out twice a year and they buy it. As a city, we can look at it at a longer horizon and say, the prices are good right now, let's lock in for 2 or 3 years. So that's what community choice aggregation allows you to do on the price side. So we've gotten this passed. The last city council and mayor passed it. It was during the pandemic, and the problem was that once the pandemic hit, the price structure of the energy markets went wacko. If you remember the first couple of months of the pandemic, energy prices plummeted, and now they've gone up, and now we have a war in Ukraine. So the energy markets are responding to global events as opposed to the energy markets acting in their normal supply and demand range. So our energy consultant, Colonial Power, has recommended that we hold off until we know what's going on in the energy market, because nobody can predict what's going to happen in Ukraine. Nobody can really predict if there's going to be a new variant that shuts things down. So we'd like more stability in the market so that we can do these things. What else we can do with community choice aggregation is add another power. along with robocalls for sign up with our energy, you've probably also got mailers from solar power companies that say, hey, you can get a good deal on solar. And those are actually pretty good in general. What they do is they have a solar farm, and they will sell you the power from that farm. And so you sign an agreement, and it's usually what happens is you get, say, a 10% discount. So they will give you credits on your bill, and then you have to pay them. So it's actually a two-bill process. In the end, what happens is you get your utility bill. So let's say your utility bill is $150. Under that bill, there might be something that says, oh, you got a $100 credit from XYZ solar farm. And then you get in, and so your net amount you pay National Grid is $50. And then you get a second bill from XYZ solar farm that says, we gave you a $100 credit, you now pay us $90. So at the end of the day, you paid $140 instead of $150. Good deal, it supports solar.
Hey, can I just ask, did anyone sign up for the Nexamp Community Solar Program? Yeah, so there's a few people that did. That's hopefully you're finding that.
What's it called?
A great program.
What was the name of it?
Nexamp Community Solar.
Okay.
N-E-X-A-M-P. I don't know what they have left for availability, but that was something that the city organized for residents. I think we had about 130 sign up houses in Newburyport sign up for that. And it's a fixed discount, but you do get two bills, so that's the downside.
So what we are trying to do is do that with community aggregation. So take the community solar and combine it with the aggregation. And so that would be that we get the solar power from a farm, and as a community, we get to sign up for it wholesale. So instead of you saying, oh, I've got 5,000 kilowatt hours per year on my energy bill, we can say we've got 20,000 residents, and we can buy everything from a solar farm. We just take and throw it into our energy mix, combining the two. And that's because solar farms get incentives for selling to residents. And we're saying we can give you a whole bunch of residents at once. The issues with this, while the law doesn't say you can't do it, the law also doesn't say you can do it. So we've been working with our aggregation consultant to get this done. And he's very excited about it because it's a new product that he can bring to his residents. So it actually came out of the Newburyport Energy Advisory Committee. And so it would be that we would be a single purchaser as a city for a solar farm. And it would get you out of the two electric bill problem. So it would be just one bill from National Grid, and it would have an average rate that folds in whatever we got as a deal and whatever we got from solar farms. So right now, the Department of Public Utilities Commissioner thinks it's a good idea. It passed the 400 megawatt review, which is just a technical way of saying for the solar program, they review it periodically. He said, yeah, we'd like to do it. It just has to get into law, and hopefully we will be able to start rolling that in as we pull the trigger on doing community choice aggregation.
But we don't have a time frame on that yet.
We don't have a time frame. Okay. There's also the general issue of green energy or offsets. You might hear about other towns that say, oh my Lord, we are 100% green, we get all of our power from wind farms. And technically they can legally say that, and in some sense it's true, but it's useful to understand how the process works. Most of those claims of being green energy are what's called offsets. And the way it works is an energy producer, whether a solar farm or a wind farm someplace, gets a certain set of incentives to produce renewable energy. And so they get tax credits, they get depreciation, they get rebates and all that stuff. But the state would also like them to actually prove that they're actually making something. You don't want to give a bunch of money to a solar farm and then not have it produce anything. So every time they produce power, they get to sell the power, but they also get something else, which is called a renewable energy certificate. And legally, the renewable energy certificate embodies 100% of the environmental benefits of producing that power. And that has a separate market. And the way it was originally set up, it's for power suppliers to purchase those in an auction, and they are required to have a certain amount of those energy certificates. So it's really a way of funding renewable energy. and it's getting the power suppliers to pay for it, which really means we pay for it because we pay the power suppliers. And the way it is set up is it started at a low amount and every year ratchets up by 1%. So right now, power suppliers have to cover, I believe it's 17 or 18% by buying these renewable energy certificates. And that supports renewable energy in the state of Massachusetts, and it allows them to say, we've done this. Now, people have come and said, oh, we can purchase those too, and that will mean that we're supporting solar power. We can buy those certificates and then retire them, and then it'll make it harder for other energy sources to purchase them. And that's true, but there's this out. They don't have to buy them. They can purchase alternative performance or alternative compliance statements. So it really doesn't affect the market. It's not as if that if there were no renewable energy certificates, you'd have to shut down fossil fuel plant. No, they would just pay a different set of money to the state. So it's controversial whether having residents purchase these or cities through aggregation purchasing them actually does much for green. As an example, we could buy wind credits from wind farms in Texas, Oklahoma. They're very reasonable to cover every bit of carbon emissions in the city. It would cost the city about $500,000 a year. That's it. And we would be able to legally claim that we are 100% net zero. Cover everything for $500,000 a year. Our city budget is over $70 million a year, so it's less than 1% of the city budget. We could probably do it with a couple of raffles. But would it change any CO2 going into the atmosphere? Not really. So it's not necessarily a good match. Big organizations like Boston University build their own solar farms in places like Nebraska, North Dakota, and they take the credits from there. They're putting new power online to offset their power in Boston. That works. But just buying wind credits from a windmill that's already up doesn't necessarily do it. So, offsets are a risky business, and they may be good, they may not. The best advice we can give is spend your money on conservation because that has a lasting effect. If you insulate your homes, you insulate your buildings, that will pay back year after year instead of my $500,000 just paid some wind farm for this year and it stops next year. And then use offsets and find good ones as a last resort when you've done everything else.
Local assets.
Yep. All right. City solar. What have we done in the city? We've actually done a fair bit in the city. City of Newburyport was a very early adopter of solar. Back in, I think it was 2008 or 2009, put 500,000 kilowatts on the DPS in Knock Middle School. So that was the largest system in the state at the time, here in Newburyport. We also Net0, which means we buy the energy from the solar farm on Rabbit Road. We buy 2.4 million kilowatt hours a year, and we buy another 2.9 million kilowatt hours a year from NextAmp. And that saves the city about $90 grand a year in energy costs. There might be solar going on in the landfill. We don't know, that's had ups and downs. If that happens, we'd like to purchase that as well. We can use that in the mix. What about our residents? Our residents have been very active. Joanne was solar coach for our second Solarize campaign. We've done 2 Solarize campaigns. They're funded a bit by the state. They're to help residents get solar. And look at how this went. This is the number. So this is data I put together from building permits. So building permits each quarter, how many solar systems were purchased? In like 2010, 2011, basically nothing. There were maybe 5 or 6 systems in the city. What's this bump here? That's Solarize program number 1 in 2012, 2013. We got, I think it was 48 solar systems. Though that's them. We now have over 425 systems in the city. This goes as far as 2021. I need to get the last year's data in there. But we've gone from basically 0 up to over 400. That's over 4.5 megawatts. That's for individuals, that's for companies. You see them at the tannery, you see them in the industrial park, you see them on people's homes everywhere. And there was a study done that says the biggest barrier to solar is getting people to recognize that it works. And having solar in your town that people can see generally corresponds with more people getting solar. So this little bump at the start really started us on the way for that big curve. We also recently won an award for solar excellence in the city. I'm not sure what it is, but this week I'm going to pick up the award so I can let you know next time.
The Solar Energy Business Association of New England.
So we'll find out what
that, but we did.
All right. Building ordinances. They are really important because the people in this room, I'm talking to the choir. You are all the activists. You go to meetings, you're here, you go to city council meetings, you go to planning board meetings, and you say, why isn't this building being done more green? What can we do? And it always seems that we're behind the 8 ball when we do that. So if you can get things instantiated in building ordinances or city ordinances, that means the bureaucracy of the city has to pay attention because they go, well, they passed this. So we've got to do it. And so we've been working a lot on saying what city ordinances are possible, spend our time on that. What city ordinances are not possible, don't spend time on that. And what can we do to get the system to change? And we've gotten 2 through the last city council mayor. Jared Eigerman was very helpful on this. He did a lot of the crafting. 2 really important ordinances. And these are for municipal buildings. So the first is energy use reporting. So it says every year, if you are a facilities manager or you're a department head and you have a building, vehicles, all that sort of stuff, you have to report how much energy you use in a standard format so we can compare it and benchmark it with other buildings so that city council can know how much we're using and we can understand whether it makes sense to improve things or not. The second ordinance says for any new building or major rehab the city's going to do, you got to get net zero in on the bids. You got people who bid on, when you put out an RFP, a request for proposal on a new project or a rehab, you have to say, anybody who bids on this has to have some sustainability experience and let us know about it. And you have to give us options. And you have to let us know not only what those options are going to cost in terms of construction, what they're going to cost in terms of operation. And these 2 ordinances were actually pretty uncontroversial. There was a lot of debate on them, on changing them and tweaking them this way, but the city council liked them because what they did is they give city council information. They don't force city council to do anything. They don't necessarily say, you got to do the net zero option. But what they say is, city council, you are going to have the information when you have to make a decision which plan to purchase, which contractor to go with. You will have the information to know what they will cost and what their operation costs will be and how much energy they will use. And you will then be able to make a better decision. So framing ordinances as better information for city council is a good way to go. We'd like to have similar sorts of things for residents. So they're generally go under the name BEUDO, Building Energy Use Disclosure Ordinances. And so the same sort of thing that buildings have to have report their use. These are a little more controversial because they ask you to do that. And the reason you want that is because when people go to buy a home, when they go to rent an apartment, you want them to have the same sort of consumer information to know how much this is going to cost me. And is it a real energy hog or is it really well conditioned? So getting those for consumers would be good too. The third thing is a little more controversial, and it's not clear how it would go and whether it's worth pushing for. It would be basically, the problem is, as a city, we are not allowed to write our own building codes, which is probably a good thing. You want professionals to do that, not people like me. And so we can't just say, this is how you have to build your building. We have to wait for the state to say, here's a net zero building code. Here's something you can do. What some cities tried to do is say, no more natural gas hookups because you're going to have to change those to get to the net zero goals later. And that got shot down by the Attorney General, saying that's essentially writing your own building code. So the way around it is, well, the Attorney General is not fundamentally against that. What is legal is you can send a home rule petition, which is sending something to the state legislature that would allow you to do that. And the state has said we're going to allow 10 communities to have these home rule petitions go through, which would say that the city could say any new building or major rehab, and the question of how that is defined for major rehab, doesn't go on natural gas, goes on electric, because there's a pathway, a clear pathway for the electric grid to become more green. And so we are in discussions on this now to see whether we will move that forward. We're talking to some city councilors, see if it makes sense. So, future ordinances. Along with the sort of building energy use disclosure ordinances, there are what will be coming down the pike is some sort of net zero building ordinance that the state will provide for us, and that we will ask city council to pass. And it will have things like new buildings or major rehabs have to meet a certain standard or prove equivalence. Most new buildings will need a solar component, or at least be solar ready, so that they are built, so that their roofs are appropriate for it, that they can handle the load, so that they are facing appropriately, so that their electric panels have enough power, have enough space for new additions, things like that. And then longer term, you'd say, we want a house to have a percentage of its power from solar. There are issues with net zero building codes. Generally, walls have to be thicker. There's more insulation. Roof insulation has to be thicker. So there are some thoughts of if you need an extra 4 inches on critical houses that are in very small footprints, you may give an easement to say, okay, you can have a bigger footprint by the amount of excess insulation. And of course, we're in an old town. We've got lots of old stock. So you want to make sure that you don't destroy your historic homes just because you want to make them a little more energy efficient. You want to do appropriate things. You want to give exemptions for older homes, but you want to make sure that they also have other options to become more energy efficient. And we know for building new buildings, this is possible. Hall and Moscow have done it on Hillside Court. Minko has done a very good job on their buildings out at the train station. So we now have examples right here in Newburyport where we can do new construction very efficiently. Okay, so that's sort of the big picture what we're trying to do at the city level. What are the things you can do as just residents? The first thing that always comes to mind is get a mass save audit for your home. I mean, it's free. They give you a whole bunch of free stuff like LED light bulbs, and they help you figure out what can be done. And the most important thing is to plan, because you don't want to. It's not today that you need a new roof. It's not today that you need to re-side your house. It's not today that you need a new furnace or a new hot water tank. But guaranteed, you will need a new hot water tank. One day, there's going to be water on the basement floor, and you're going to get a new hot water tank that day. And if you've done a little planning and said, these are better than those, I can get a rebate on these, and you kind of know some of that information, that'll make your life easier. The things the things you can plan with your mass save energy audit is, okay, you've got a roof that's 10 years old. It's going to last another 20 years, maybe only 15 years. But if it does leak, is that a time to put more insulation on the roof when the roofer's doing it? You can talk about that with your auditor. And that way, when the day comes you need to replace your roof, you can ask your roofer the important questions. Same thing with siding, same thing with furnaces. That you want to plan to be ready for that day when you need to do it. And the Mass Save audit is a great place to get it. So periodically visiting the Mass Save site, finding what their rebates are, what their programs are, what they're doing is a good thing to do. And you can also come to the Energy Advisory Committee meetings. We're open. They're open to the public. They are on Zoom for the time being. We may get back to in person sometime soon.
But on the mass audits, the Mass Save audits, we've done a number of campaigns, marketing campaigns, to let people know about that. We're going to be starting another one with All in Energy. And we're going to specifically work with retirees and with people that are in fixed income, because we haven't really ever targeted that market. But that's another thing to look for. You know, we'll start marketing that, and if we can come up with, you know, specific rebates or programs that can help people, we will be doing that. So look for that soon.
And one more thing, it's staring me in the face. I can't believe I didn't mention it. The city has given us some moolah for a new website from Mass Energize, and Joanne Clemens over there is actually in charge of that project. And so a group of volunteers, I believe it was in Wayland, put together a website system particularly for energy and for communities. So it will have a lot of the information on the city, on how much energy we use, and it will have a lot of links to things that residents can do, helpful tips and information. It will have some social network portions to it so people can ask questions of one another and all that sort of stuff. So it's really exciting. It will be coming soon.
Yep.
All right, and I think I will hand it back to Mom.
Okay. Well, I think Mike's just gone over some of these, but what can you do? You know, converting your home to electricity, getting heat pumps for your air conditioning and your heating, electric vehicles, that's huge. Again, I said earlier we might be putting in some new charging stations, but we see how fast the electric vehicle market is going. It just seems like every day there's a new manufacturer that's saying they're going to go all electric, or they're going to offer more vehicles, so that's a good thing. So that market is changing, and of course gas prices is a good incentive to go electric as well. Solar if you can, and if you can't, if you can buy from a solar farm like Nexamp, something that's in Massachusetts, that's a good thing. That's participating in a local project. And then just, you know, encouraging your neighbors, talking to friends and people that you know about it, you know, educating yourselves about what else you can do in your own home. And again, we're trying to get all that kind of information for you on the Mass Energize website, which will be on the city's website under energy once it gets up. Any ideas? We don't really know yet when that's going to be ready, do we?
We're targeting September.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Great. Great. And other big picture, obviously, wind power is a big one. That, you know, that's something beyond us. But, you know, there's a lot more talk about offshore wind, a bigger wind program, electrification of transportation. You know, there's some small talk about the MBTA, taking all those trains and electrifying them instead of diesel trains. Mike had a great idea one day, is what if we use the median strip on 95 for electric buses? I mean, that's like pie in the sky, but you never know. You got what we heard from that film earlier was we have to think differently. We really do. We all have to think differently and come up with different ideas and be more innovative and creative. So whatever that means, if you have an idea, you know, don't be afraid to share it, because you just never know where it will go. And being in Massachusetts with MIT and Harvard and all these amazing schools, we can actually make a difference working with them. And then, you know, encouraging your elected representatives to make changes and be bold about changes and looking at new things and demanding things from their citizens. And as Mike said, we're all here, we all go to meetings, we all do the work, but we just have to continue to do that. And we have to encourage our friends and neighbors to do the same. We have great organizations like ACES, Art's here, who manages that organization. You guys are doing a lot, so we appreciate that. And Jean, who's our resiliency chair, is doing a lot of work around resiliency, which is all around all the things that the city needs to do. And Mike Morris is here. He crafted our resiliency plan. But these are all really important things that the city is looking at to make sure. Oh, Sarah is on that committee as well. Sarah's very busy. I think everybody here has done something. But there's a lot that the city is looking at doing. You know, hardening its assets for, you know, storm surge or resiliency, making sure that we're not left with no sewer or no water, or that water doesn't get in, our drinking water doesn't get impacted. And then our facilities, as Mike was saying earlier, one of the ordinances asks that the facilities managers give a report every year to the city council on what they're using. This is making city facility managers accountable for what they're doing in their building. So it's really important. And we do have software with through the Green Communities program that can do that. So it's really easy. I actually do the work for them, but we work together to get it done. But things like that are really important. So that is it. We are going to take questions.
Well, on that last point, is there any way to share in the community the state and federal bills that need emphasis for what's happening here?
I don't have all of that together. That's a lot. There's a lot going on. I know that there was a recent string of discussion on Net0 about the aggregation bill, and there was something in there about, but there's so many bills. I don't monitor that on a daily basis, so I have no idea.
I think that's a great idea.
But it's a great idea to ask
I
our
think,
representatives' offices.
I think there are some organizations that do a lot more tracking of that, like MCAN.
Yeah, well,
and so it might be worthwhile having MCAN, MAPC. They have bigger staffs, and they sort of keep a view on what's going on in the federal.
Or I would say our state reps would also have their finger on the pulse with that. So perhaps someone from their office could keep us.
that would be a good ask.
Yeah, it would. Maybe that's a good project for an intern. To sort of bring that all together.
Oh, yeah.
That's good, that's good.
So what you're tendering here is new buildings and rehabs, not existing buildings being forced to go into all electric. Because currently I have gas heat, gas hot water heater, gas stove, gas fryer.
Right.
And I'm planning to put in a new train gas heating system. My problem with all the renewables is I don't believe it's doable. I think
to fully convert.
So we're supposed to repeat the question so that people on Zoom.
It's just not going to happen.
So the question is, with an older house, the question is, it's really hard to switch from gas to all renewables. And it is hard. But I would remind you, I live in a house from 1760. When it was built, it was heated with wood. It then went to coal, probably in the mid-1800s. In the early 1900s, it probably switched to oil, which is what it was when I bought the place. It now runs on natural gas. And the next time it gets shifted out, it will probably be electric. So right now, it's gone through 4 shifts, at least 4 shifts. And furnaces don't last forever. So
I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about reliability. I don't think renewables are reliable. And gas is.
Well, it depends what you're talking about. I'm not sure what the question is on if renewables are reliable. Is it the system, the electric heat pumps that you say are not reliable, or is it that you can't get powered renewably?
I monitor ISO New England. They're responsible for the whole New England grid. And right now, they have the capability of 1.5 gigawatts of wind power and about 600 megawatts, 0.6 gigawatts of solar. Dispatchable solar, not the rooftop, real dispatchable solar. I've seen days where both of those are practically zero. It's cloudy, no wind, you're getting nothing.
Yeah. But we had a plan to get hydroelectric from Quebec.
Hydro, they won't, but they
that's being held up by the state of Maine.
They block those lines.
So, right, but it's not that won't happen at some point. And it wasn't.
I know what you're saying, but it's hope. You don't have data. You do not have a plan. That's all I'm saying.
How about you having some hope?
I do. My hope is in nuclear.
Oh, yeah, that's
That's it.
If you look at those current bills are in there, they don't
I think that's in the mix.
Look at
I think it's in the mix.
nuclear,
But
except
also
fusion, which is totally crazy.
Right, but National Grid is also looking at storage, innovation in the storage industry, storing. So there's a lot of things that need to happen over time.
I know, and I
and it needs to
appreciate
be
what you're
diversified.
doing. I'm just saying, I keep hearing the same thing over and over, how great renewables are. No one has a plan. There's no one in charge of the electrical grid. ISO New England is just an operator. They own nothing. And as you said,
The utilities are
all
the
of the
state.
facilities, the equipment is owned by several hundred different suppliers.
Right.
Nobody can make them do what they, the only thing that drives them is cost per kilowatt hour
Right.
and reliability. They know if that grid fails, people with pitchforks will be after them. And so that's the two things that drive them, not green energy or
Well,
renewable.
they have mandates from the state that says they have to have green energy. They have to buy a certain amount. And so that gets ratcheted up every year. So there is a pathway, and the state has to figure out how to do it, whether it's going to be offshore wind, whether it's going to be hydro from Quebec, whether it's, and in all that will be more small solar and small wind, and nuclear may be part of the mix. But that remains to be seen.
It's the cost of solar. Right now, it's heavily subsidized. You mentioned renewable energy.
I think that this is the wrong discussion for this. That this is a discussion on what we
Okay.
Well,
can
it
do
could affect
locally.
you, that's why.
Come on.
And-
Time out.
And so having a discussion on whether solar is more heavily subsidized than whether natural gas, I think that's a discussion for a different group. But the question is what we can do here. Next
Well, my
question.
question to him is, are you concerned about reliability because you don't want to spend more money if you have to buy gas or, electric from some system that's not economical, or is it just that you can't get electricity? 'Cause that's two
You're
different
talking about
things.
me personally?
Your question, because you said renewables aren't reliable, but what I'm hearing them say is that you're going to get electricity. The problem might be that you may not want to pay what they offer to you, but you will be getting something reliable. There's no way you're not going to get electricity for your new systems if you put them in.
Let me just say a word here about electric systems, because we didn't talk about how they work, how heat pumps work, whether they are air-to-air heat pumps or geothermal heat pumps. So normally, probably the electric heat systems that we're used to thinking about when we were kids, electric baseboard, they are an electric resistor. You put 1 unit of electric energy in, you get 1 unit of heat out. 1 to 1. That's what you get. Heat pump systems, what you're doing is using electricity to run a pump that moves heat from over here to over here, much like a refrigerator. And so what happens is you get more energy transferred for each unit of energy you put in. Typical coefficient of performance, which is the ratio of how much energy you transfer to how much energy you put in, is around 3. That's temperature dependent and all that. So heat pumps are 3 times more efficient than baseboard electric heaters. So you're using less energy on it. Right now, it's difficult on a price to justify switching natural gas to electricity. It is possible, just on price, to justify switching an oil system or a propane system to electric system. So natural gas is a
I hear
tough
what
one.
you're saying. I've looked at heat pumps with gains of 3, and they're still more expensive than natural gas.
Well, I can give you an example. I just spoke to a neighbor of
I'm
mine.
not-
Hang on.
I'm not arguing about
I just
cost.
spoke to a neighbor of mine who's redoing a 2-unit home, about 850 square feet in each of the unit, 1860 home brick. His HVAC guy could sell them, could redo so he's going down to the studs. So he's doing a full rehab. It would cost him 25 grand to do it in natural gas. Natural gas heating and air conditioning. Going heat pumps, it costs $50,000. So that's an extra 25, except National Grid has $10,000 rebates for each of his units. That brings it down to $30,000. So there's a $5,000 difference. But because he's doing it with the electric heat pumps, he's eligible for a heat loan, which gives him 7 years to pay it off, 0 interest. And he says that's what makes it worthwhile, because he doesn't have to pay it up front. He has more money to do better historic renovation of the house. So there are people who've looked at it and said it makes more sense to go electric than natural gas. And so you'll have to look at your own situation.
So, Michael, the future cost, because we got to think about this next generation. This is not about us and how much we can save or spend or whatever. It's about what's the future life for our great-grandchildren, yours included.
Right, and I'm not talking about cost. I'm really concerned with reliability.
Did you have a question?
I do. It's a different topic and it might be sort of touchy, but I'm curious whether anybody is trying to do anything about all the gas-powered landscaping machines that are in the city.
So the question is, gas-powered landscaping machines. Do you want to take it on?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Another war, I could
I
say.
believe California has passed an ordinance, a law that says, and I don't know when it kicks in, but no new gas-powered lawnmowers, leaf blowers, all that they have to be electric. And I don't know if there's a similar bill in Massachusetts, but I think there would be support for it. And the point is, again, it's to phase it in, as so you have one, you get to use it. When it conks out, you go to the store, and the only ones there are the electric ones. And there are actually some big advantages. They're less noisy. So, you know, the 7 a.m. being woken up by somebody with a leaf blower, that starts going away because they're much quieter, the electric ones.
Well, I also thought I'd heard something about, for commercial landscapers, whether that's going to start to be phased.
And that all gets,
state thing, I guess.
That all gets into how your battery technology improves. And can you charge them?
Can I ask one from a Zoom participant?
Yeah.
Sure.
He's asking, what are the plans for municipal electrical vehicles?
Oh, I can talk about that. So the question is, what are the plans for municipal electric vehicles? So we just did a study, a vehicle assessment through National Grid. They paid for it with a consultant out of Boston to look at all of our 114 vehicles. That includes trailers and a number of boats and everything that the city has. And it's a plan over the next 15 years of how we can electrify. Now there's certain vehicles, inspection cars that are going to be easy. We have a couple already that are in service, but the dump trucks and the plows, there's nothing to replace those, or the fire engines. We have our first police vehicle that's an electric vehicle, and it's sort of a pilot, they're calling it, but they're hoping that that's going to go well, and they would like to have all of those vehicles be electric. So we do have a plan. Every year we are going to be looking at it and upgrading according to that plan. And in that plan also is what the industry is doing and how they're upgrading all those different vehicles. So we do have a plan for that as well. Yes.
The solar pumps. You said there were two kinds. There's thermal. What is the other? Solar pump. Heat pumps.
Heat pumps.
Heat pumps.
So the heat pumps, there's the air-to-air heat pumps, and then there's geothermal or water heat pumps. So it's, you dig a hole in the ground and you pump water in a loop, or you bring up water. And water is denser, and so it has more heat capacity in it. So a gallon of water has a lot more thermal energy in it than a gallon of air.
But those are the ones that they said don't work as well in northern parts of the country because of the cold. Is that the ones that?
So they are more expensive, but they can perform better. They can be much more efficient because once you dig down in the ground, the water's pretty much at 55 degrees all the time.
Right.
Where you're dealing with air, sometimes it's
That's how deep you go down.
That's fine. So
there is
there
that.
trades off.
And then what kind of amperage do you need to support like the 3-to-1 heat pump?
I couldn't tell you what.
I mean, are you talking though that you have to have more than your normal panel?
I don't think you need more than your normal panel, but depending what you already have on your panel is going to determine.
You have a hot tub or something like that.
Well,
But yeah.
I'm kind of restricted to 100 amps, and that's what.
Right.
Which isn't very much.
Yeah. You might have to upgrade on that.
Can I just make a comment? Is that I think we all have to recognize we're talking about what's going to happen in the next 30 years, not in 3 years or 3 months. So the idea that today we don't have capacity for storage, batteries basically, compared to what we had in 1990, 30 years ago. And look how many electric cars were on the road then.
Right.
How about today? They cost more, for damn sure they cost more, but when the price of gasoline is at $5, it kind of makes sense to have those cars on the road. So I'm not so much worried about the science, that the science will not advance in storage of power, however it's stored, or where that source comes from, like nuclear. I happen to think nuclear is one of the answers also, especially in fission.
Yeah.
But it's 30 years we're talking about, not immediately. So when we talk about what can we do today, we can do things today, and they will have an impact. The impact will be small today, but over 30 years, it's going to be huge.
Well, we wouldn't go anywhere if we didn't start talking about it as we're doing tonight. If we didn't start making plans as we're doing, starting to, figure out what's working and what doesn't work. Yes.
If everybody would read Time magazine that had Earth Inc. on the cover of about 6 weeks ago, it'll provide a picture of how the recognition is that governments aren't going to solve what's in front of us. It's going to be the technological world and the collaboration among these guys, and it's happening. It's very hopeful.
Okay.
Very hopeful.
All right, you're saying Time magazine 6 weeks ago.
There's also a podcast called Threshold, which covers, one of their series is called Time to 1.5. It's a lot of really, really good information about climate change. They did a whole series on the big conference that happened this year.
Okay, so the podcast
Threshold.
Okay.
Yeah, Threshold.
Okay. Jane?
So I have a really basic question, and I feel like I should already know the answer to it. But our neighbor lost a tree about a few weeks ago, had it cut down, and now I think I can put solar on my garage for the first time because our roof is just not capable of holding it. What is the first phone call I should make? Like, how do I go about getting solar?
Well, you can do a couple of things. I mean, you might have a quick answer to because you put it on. But I would get 3 quotes, and you can go to Energy Sage, which will give you quotes online. You just you put in your bill information, and it will spit out some solar companies and what their estimates are. We have 2 companies that we worked with our Solarize campaign that we vetted. I'd be happy to give you their names. You can call them, but I would get a couple different quotes, and they'll come out and look at it. They'll tell you if your roof structure is good, and what your costs are with all of the variables. So there's variables in your panels and your inverter and your battery, and then what your roof may or may not need.
I call Tesla too.
Tesla.
Oh yeah, Tesla. Yeah.
And buyer beware in terms of solar companies that install solar. There's so many that are popping up all over the place.
Right, that's why
not all
I'm
of
worried
them are
about.
reliable. So go to
use the
good
ones. I would
source.
call the ones that we worked with.
Are they on the website, or will they be eventually? But I can call you.
Well, see, I can tell you, it was Sunbug Solar and Solar Flare is who we used. Sunbug Solar and Solar Flare.
So Molly, along that same line, a concern I've had with Mass Save from the beginning as just a homeowner is beyond that free energy audit they do, they push you to basically you're on your own if you have anything major that you need to get done in your house to find your own contractors. So I'm really pleased to hear that this city's vetted a couple solar. Have you thought about doing that for
Well, that's what
other ones too?
with this work with All Energy that we're going to be doing, we're hoping that we can find a heat company that we can work with as well.
Insulation, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they do have a number. They'll give us a list. Whether we vet it, I guess we can talk about.
And I believe Mass Save also, somewhere buried on their site, has some lists of vetted contractors.
Yeah, it does, but it might be extensive. That's what I'm afraid of.
See, that's a good question. Like, I wanted to have insulation put in my attic through Mass Save, but they wanted someone to come in and blow tape, newspaper, whatever that stuff. I didn't want that. I wanted.
You wanted foam insulation, which is
or even fiberglass, and they didn't give me any names for that. They said, because they only.
They should have those names, but I just think it's a really extensive.
So they
list.
should.
So we can ask All in Energy.
Because that's what I want. I didn't.
Also, for insulation, there are, I don't know what the current rebate programs are, but Mass Save does have some rebate programs for insulation, particularly for closed cell foam insulation, and they have certified contractors.
Yeah.
So that would be a good thing to check.
So you could ask Mass Save, because they would. When I talked, I had to talk to this person that was obviously trying to sell their contractors and services.
One of the issues that I think you run up is that the Mass Save auditors, sometimes the companies that they are with, they have certain skills that they're trying to sell you.
Yeah.
So if it's an installation company, they will try to sell you installation, but they don't do solar, so they don't really sell you solar. So you want to take their advice, and you don't want to necessarily take their offer. It may be a good offer, but you may want to
You still have to be a
still
smart
have-
consumer and do a little.
Yeah, that's what, because I did get.
I wish we
did
could
the
do it all,
ceiling,
but
I
we
didn't
can't.
do the.
We can't vet it all, but we try,
You know, there are some companies that are window companies that do audits, some that are insulation, some that are HVAC.
Right.
So they all have their thing that they're trying to sell. Great.
As far as solar is concerned, a bunch of years ago when Sunbug was evaluating people's homes, and they were using that device on your roof to figure out if your roof pointed in the right direction, and ours didn't quite, and they said because of the solar panels at the time, they weren't capable of producing enough electricity when the sun was at a certain angle. Have solar panels improved over the last few years where they would produce electricity even when the sun was at a more severe angle than almost directly on?
Somebody needs to be muted.
Yeah.
So panels have improved in general. So it's not that a new panel will make a badly sited roof magically great. It will produce more power than an older panel would on. And so it still comes down to how much power are you actually going to get with a new panel. Prices have come down, but again, we're in a period with a pandemic and a war, and so
supply issues.
There are supply issues on solar panels, so I can't really tell you how the prices have been. They're certainly a lot less than they were when I bought my system.
Yeah, I think it's worth visiting.
But you know, that's something that talking to a solar company would be able to help you.
I think one of the remote participants has a question. Jerry,
Yes.
do you want to come off mute and ask your question now?
I don't see you yet.
Hello?
Okay.
Hello?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you for this conversation, although it's been a bit frustrating that the sound has not been very good. Hopefully you'll get that corrected in an upcoming meeting. I live in Rockport, and I've been working with the Green Community Task Force headed up by Todd Micus, who's also on this call. And one thing I wanted to make you aware of is if you go to the Mass Save website and you put in your zip code, you'll get a list of Mass Save approved contractors. All of these companies are approved and certified, and they will do a blower door test for you free of charge, and will make recommendations on how you can proceed in insulating your house and offer you potential rebates. It's a very good website, and it's something that is worthwhile that everyone look at.
Okay.
And these people are certified, they are qualified to do the testing. There's an independent Green Community Task Force who's very knowledgeable about this, and I think it's something that everyone should go to as a starting point. Before you even look at solar, you got to get your house properly insulated.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much. That was a Mass Save comment from the city of Rockport, or the town of Rockport's Energy Advisory Committee, saying that you go to the Mass Save website for installation vendors. Anyone else? Mike?
So back in 2014, there were a lot more incentives, both federal and state, for installing rooftop solar, and which we took advantage of. We just moved to a different house and we'd like to sort of replicate what we had at the old house, but the financial incentives aren't there right now. And so we're just kind of waiting for the Biden administration, whoever, to maybe, reinstate some of those incentives that existed. Because in the end, the previous house, we sized the array to power a car and take care of all of our energy needs. And it was still oil heat and oil hot water, and we also ran a pellet stove primarily in the wintertime to heat the house, but the oil heat was there sort of as a backup. And when we sold the house last spring, one of the things we did was we had to calculate really what our net energy costs were for the house, which I hadn't really done. I did a sort of a rough spreadsheet in the beginning of buying my wife another gas-powered car, running it for 5 years, what would that cost just on fuel alone, not in any of the maintenance, versus buying an electric car and the solar panels. And on that early analysis, it was $5,000 cheaper to buy the new electric car plus the panels on the roof than it was to run just a gas-powered car for 5 years.
Wow, that's great.
But in the end, the question was, well, what does this house cost to heat? And when I did the analysis between the SREC credits we were getting and the appropriately sized array, it cost us $700 a year to run a car and basically heat and power the entire house.
That's fantastic.
And I have a friend of mine who, he's no tree hugger by any means, and what he created was out of necessity. He had a piece of property somewhere up in Maine on a river. And it was a beautiful piece of property, but he was too far away from any main road for the power company to be willing to run a line to his house.
Right.
So he built the house to be energy efficient. He installed heat pumps, and he figured all this stuff out himself. He figured out the size of the solar array he needed to heat and cool the house, and he had backup battery systems so that he could run lights and heat pumps at night when the array wasn't making power, and the thing's totally off the grid.
Oh, that's great.
And so the technology's out there, and it can be utilized. But right now, you know, the incentives for people to, you know, shell out the money on rooftop solar aren't really there. And I was curious if you had any insights or heard any programs coming, you know, down the pike. I know the incentives for heat pumps are really good. We looked into that right away.
They are very good right now.
And
I don't
we have
know.
an AC system that's 20 years old.
Right.
It still works, but you know, I've got oil heat and I've got this AC system. But which is going to break down fairly soon. If I put in heat pumps, I get AC and heat.
Right.
And there's a $10,000 rebate. So instead of spending $20,000 on a new AC system, I spend $20,000 on a heat pump system, but I get $10,000 back. So net, it's going to cost me $10,000.
Right.
But I need the electricity from the solar panels to kind of make it all work.
Right.
So I don't know what the current state is, but it was originally a 30% federal tax credit on the solar, and that's dropped some. And the logic behind it was we don't want to be funding these forever. As the prices come down for solar panels, we should also be reducing the incentives. And we should be incentivizing people to get in early, not incentivizing them to wait later and getting a big incentive when things are cheaper. That's sort of the logic that goes on with the incentive. So there are federal tax credits, there's the state rebates, and then there's the SRECs. And again, the SRECs, the amount of SRECs you get for producing power has dropped a bit as part of the incentive program that scales down. And this is all predicated on the price of solar panels continuing to drop.
Which it has.
And then, excuse me, between the Trump tariffs on China, the pandemic, and the war in Ukraine, that has thrown the world into turmoil. And I don't really know what happened. So the price of solar panels has not continued on its downward trajectory. The Biden administration has said they will lift the tariffs on Asian solar panels, perhaps not Chinese, and so that should add some relief. But I can't really talk to what the cost is these days. Certainly, it's much cheaper than when I purchased them. So
that, you know, if you really want to get on top of net zero, especially, you know, when it comes to residential, you know, 400 arrays in Newburyport is great, but how many households do we have in Newburyport? 7,000 or 8,000?
8,000, yeah.
So that's still a very small fraction, and to really wipe incentives away when there's such a huge proportion of rooftops out there that could benefit from it, and taking the financial incentives away, I think is kind of counterproductive at this point. But I mean, obviously, you know, the city has nothing to do with it. That's more of a federal government type of thing. But
I agree.
Is any of that in the infrastructure bill?
Pardon me?
Is any of that in the infrastructure bill or not?
Not that I've heard of.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I was just going to throw in the mix that there is the option to lease, lease the solar panels on your roof.
yeah, I looked into that too, and you know, it's basically, you know, you're getting a discounted electric rate, and the size of the array that they wanted to put on our house was more to benefit them than it was to benefit me.
Right.
It was about at least 30% more than what I had on the previous house. And this house, I don't know why, but when I look at our energy usage, maybe it just has fewer lights in the house or something, but our energy bill is actually fairly low, a lot less than I thought it was going to be. And it's a somewhat older house, but yeah, the leasing didn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm trying to get, I'm looking at my friend there who's sort of off the grid.
You want to be like him?
Yeah, and yeah, I'll still be hooked up to National Grid because
Right.
you know, there are going to be times when you know, maybe I won't have enough to do the battery backup.
Right.
But if I look at it in a total in terms of the year, you know, what I produce in the summer, what I pay for credits, and what I draw in the winter, it kind of comes out even, and then I think I've achieved my goal. If I can power 2 cars in the entire house.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, if we could all do that, it'd be great. Yeah. Yes.
One thing that is, I'm just gonna make some observations. I'm surprised there's not any young people.
Right, I know.
I don't understand, you know.
Well,
I mean,
here.
yes, that age. You know, what are you doing to attract more of the people that are gonna be impacted by what's happening? I mean,
Well,
we're impacted.
We do work closely with the environmental club at the high school, and then at the Knock Middle School, and then Art works closely with a lot of students through ACES. But yeah.
Yeah, they're motivated young people who want to be leaders.
Good.
But they're not getting into all the details yet. Yeah.
I live
Yeah.
I mean, that's
really.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, obviously we all have houses probably or have some kind of property, and obviously you can get ourselves to make a difference. But in the longer term, is the younger people who are going to suffer from all our use.
Yeah.
Do something.
Those people can't afford to do anything.
What's that? What's that?
He would like somebody to say something optimistic to give him
Oh, to
a
give them
positive
hope?
boost. Here you go. Go
Well,
ahead, Molly.
we're making all these great plans. We're talking about it, I mean, and we're saying it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years to make these changes, and you know, we're making some solid plans and projections, and you know, trying to come up with answers for folks. It's not going to be, you know, the end-all answer, you know, like Mike was saying, but it's going to evolve over time. So I think
But you're
there's.
putting a lot of faith in future technology, right?
Well, current and future, I would say.
There's a lot of good technology right now.
Yeah.
I'm driving my car for free while you're probably paying $5 a gallon
Yeah.
to drive someplace.
Right, exactly. Yeah, look at the transportation, I would say. That sector is really, is going.
Yeah, I mean, you know, even like I was saying, like right now, our house, I think our electric bill is probably around 150, 170 a month.
Is that for heat and electric?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But my wife is still driving that car.
Right.
And when I think about that, if she was driving a gas-powered car, she'd be spending more than that just in gas alone.
Right.
So for her to be driving the electric car in whatever energy the house is using, it's a whole lot cheaper right now with the gas prices.
Yeah. So we're at 8:30. We just want to see if there's any last quick questions.
We appreciate what you do.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We'll get back to live broadcasting from NCM Hub in the future. That's a much better option. We weren't able to do that tonight, unfortunately, because of the conflict in rooms. But normally we could do that. So we're going to take a little bit of a hiatus in terms of the speaker series for the summer. Next event, as Maria said at the beginning, is going to be the film in September. We hope you'll all be able to join us there. Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.